You can go ahead and do it now. I don't think it hurts anything.
I don't know. It's like habit. My fingers like.
Hey, Kelly. All right. I'd like to welcome you to the June 7th West Des Moines City Council meeting. Please join us for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so 15 months ago, I couldn't say, please sign in. So,
Yep, and just as a reminder, press the yes button to indicate that you are present. I know it's been a long time.
I guess I don't know how to do it.
We have 5 members present.
all right, Ryan, any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes, Your Honor.
Move approval of the agenda as distributed.
Second. All right, please vote.
Wow.
You might catch me saying all in favor, say aye.
Yeah. It's wild.
5 yes.
All right, item 2 is citizens forum, which is the time for anyone in the audience that would like to address the city council on any item that's not part of public hearings, item 6, new business, item 7, or involves any litigation that the city's in currently. Citizens forum, is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, please give us your name and your address.
My name is Gary Leffler, 1235 11th Street. Still have some more questions, seems like to me, on how this broadband thing is going through. And I
Gary,
know
I
that,
just mentioned that we're not going to talk about litigation tonight on Citizens Forum. You and I had this conversation last time.
I
It's not
understand
fair
that,
for you
but-
to present issues on litigation that we can't respond to in a public meeting. So if you have any issues about the Mediacom litigation, you need to talk to the city attorney. We're not going to waste everybody's
I
time.
talked to Richard. I had a call with Richard, and I just want to do a follow-up question. Can I do that at least?
Not in the public forum. It's part of litigation. If you have a follow-up question for Mr. Szynski, I suggest you direct it to him outside of a public meeting.
Can I not ask one question on how the contracts, was the consulting part of the contract to that, did the city let that out for bidding? Is that a fair question?
No questions involved in the litigation are supposed to be spoken to by the elected officials in a public meeting. Now, Dick can respond to that question if he's comfortable directly to you.
It just seems like we're spending an awful lot of money and the taxpayers are we're having a lot of exposure for us as taxpayers, and this, all of a sudden, we've got this quote that we're under litigation, and now we as taxpayers, we can't get any answers to any questions. And I understand what you're saying, but it's like the last time I was here, you were saying that the lawsuit was frivolous and you didn't put much credit in it, and then it went before a judge, and the judge says, hey, there's some things we want to hear about here. And I think we as the public, we have a right to be somewhat more informed in what's going on when we could end up having a tremendous liability upon us as taxpayers. I don't understand why we can't have more disclosure to us. I understand the litigation part of it. What I don't understand is we're gonna be on the hook for, if you guys screwed up, everyone in this room is gonna pay for it. And that's,
Gary, I'm done with you having this conversation because I can't respond to your allegations.
There's not allegations, they're just questions about what the process that you guys went through to get to the decisions that you made.
Did you read the filings? Did you read the filings?
I've read most of everything that I can get a hold of.
So if you read the city's response, you got answers to all the questions you just raised. It talked about the public hearings, it talked about the dates, it talked about everything in our filing. And I'll end with this. The judge threw out their claim that this wasn't a valid city project that we could fund with bonds. The biggest part of their case has been dismissed.
Well, in my conversation with Richard, I asked him, he says, well, what you sent out to the public was that this was going to be more competition and prices are going to go down. And I asked Richard, I says, well, if CenturyLink has already said that they're not gonna use it, and if MediaCom is suing the city over the process, and then I asked, well, what are name me three other companies that are gonna compete against Google to access this service to the general public? And I'm not getting a response to that. And then I'm also asking, this question is, is there any example of any other government contract where we have an 18-month exclusivity to one company? And I was like, why should one company have almost basically a monopoly over that broadband system? So I'm still at a failure to, even though I've read through some of those issues, I still don't understand how this could go through city council, that we give one company an
Gary, I'm
18-month
gonna ask you one
exclusivity.
last time to take a seat. We're not talking about litigation here. We've had this conversation before. It is unfair for you to make allegations up here that we can't respond to.
Allegation. Just answer the question. Does Google have an 18-month exclusivity on this contract?
We can lease up to 10% of this to somebody else, so your answer is no. The answer to your
So
question
it's
is no.
90% correct.
You already have vendors out there that are competing for the business. They're already providing the service. All right.
Nate Hahn, 216 South Street. Couple questions for you guys. Follow up from last Tuesday's Historical Valley Junction meeting. They were supposed to get us breakdown and supposed to post the spending of what's been down there. I just want to know what the holdup is on that and where we're at with that. And then I was told at one time recently we're going to get the tax abatement financial breakdown on that. So I want to follow up on that. And then we talked about committees multiple times, and now they're moving forward with an implementation committee on 614. After 2 council meetings of them saying, let's start with that and put other people in this, here we are having a meeting and that's not being done. So I want to know why we're moving forward with that. I'd really appreciate if Tom was CC'd on all the emails. I think he needs oversight on all this. I think that's, so he can oversee what's going on as city manager. And then just a shout out to Brad. He's been awesome to work with so far.
Yeah.
So I want to say thank you on that.
Yep. No, and hopefully we can respond to your questions under report under 3A, the Valley Junction update.
Sure.
So hopefully we can get answers to your questions under that report.
Sounds good.
If we don't, we'll find out how quickly we can get answers to the
Okay.
questions we
Sounds
can't
good.
respond to. Okay?
All right. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for Citizens Forum?
Mary DeMarco, 14107 South Shore Drive, Clive. And I'm not positive, tell me if this is appropriate or not here. My question pertains to the Southeast County Line Road Improvement Project, but not, I think what I see in the agenda is just like zoning things for Microsoft that are in that area. Is that correct? So if I make a comment on that project, is that appropriate now?
If it's under public hearings, item 6, or new business, item
I
7?
don't think it is then.
Okay.
All right. So basically, I went to a public informational meeting on May 26th.
Okay.
And I learned there that the runoff water from Microsoft, even though I understand that their stormwater plan is not done, I get that. But I did learn that the way the road is going to be improved on Southeast County Line Road, it would be allowing for a culvert that basically takes the majority of their runoff and dumps it on my land, which I object to. So I just want to formally object to that. There were good ideas that were talked about there for possible solutions. And so one of them would be moving this culvert. And I just want to go on record basically as objecting to the water being dumped on my land and in support of moving that culvert.
Well, and we should get more,
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. We're just setting a hearing tonight, ma'am, so that
Okay.
she'll have an opportunity in the
Then-
future to come back.
Okay.
Yeah, and normally the goal is to not make the stormwater issue any more than it is today. In
Kinda
fact, I
said
think
it
there's
was
laws
gonna
that
be.
require
Really
that. You
against
can't
that.
release it anymore. So we'll have the public hearing, we'll have reports on that, and make sure that we have your contact information so you can
do,
understand.
from
But
that
the goal
other
is
one,
to
too.
improve stormwater runoff, not make it worse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that'd be
All
great.
right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else for Citizens Forum? Okay. Move on to mayor, city council, city manager, and other entity updates. We'll start with the Valley Junction update.
Mayor, members of the council, Clyde Evans, Community and Economic Development Director. I'll give you a real quick overview of things that have been occurring since the last council meeting. We had a really good, I think, meeting with some of the Residents Association members to talk about how we were looking to proceed with the update. Then we had a meeting last Tuesday with a broad neighborhood meeting. We had over 1,500 postcards that we sent out to all the property owners within the boundaries of the historic West Des Moines plan. At that meeting, we basically did an overview of the plan. We talked about some of the accomplishments that we've been able to get done with the plan. And then we took public input on things that the people in attendance would like to see occur with any potential update of the plan. And we started off the conversation in terms of items that they would like to see, with the givens that there is concern about architecture, building height, building materials, parking, potential trash issues, those types of things. We did get a couple of additional items that was brought up by the audience that they would like to see addressed. Some of them dealt with lighting. And then there was also some discussions about land use, that type of thing. Then we did have a city staff member attend the Resident Association meeting on Saturday to respond to questions. And based on council direction from tonight, then it would be our intent to get together with what is currently the implementation committee for the plan. And the proposal would be that that committee then would become a steering committee for a future update to that plan. We am trying to proceed on a quick pace because we had received some comments about the fact that, you know, what's been taking so long to get things moving and stuff. So we tentatively have a meeting set of that group for next Monday at 4 o'clock at West Des Moines Human Services. Following this meeting, if the council gives the direction, then we'll be sending out notice through all of our social media channels, as well as during the neighborhood meeting, we asked people to give us their email contact information, and we'll send out to everybody that was on that email list, as well as people that have previously come to council meeting asking to be notified of direction or any activity that is occurring with potential update of the plan. One takeaway that I would say from the neighborhood meeting that we had was that there was concern about lack of communication from the city's part in terms of what was happening within the area. And so we are going to try extremely hard to make sure that anybody that has an interest is kept informed in terms of what is happening in terms of planning update and any other potential meetings. Our intention is also to video record any of those meetings so that if somebody can attend, then they would be able to go to city website and other resources that we'd have, like our YouTube channel, to be able to see the discussions that occurred at these meetings. So I will take a breath and ask for any questions.
About any additional information that was raised in Citizens Forum? Do you
When-
have those?
Yeah, Tim Stiles has completed all the information. It just, I guess we just need to get it on the website. Is Tim?
We present, and I would state that we presented a broad overview of the city's investment that we've done in the last 5 years since that plan was accepted by the city council, but we did not do a breakdown.
Well, we have done a breakdown. We just need to get the information distributed out. We can get it to the groups that are interested in this. Plus, we'll get it on the website. So we have a detailed financial breakdown by Tim Stiles, CFO. So is Tim online here?
I see Tim back there.
Oh, Tim? Come on up for a second.
And if that information's done and available, can it get put on the website tomorrow?
It should be able to, yeah.
And is there a link so people know that if they're just interested in that particular information for Valley Junction, that they can just go to a link and they don't have to search through the whole site?
Tim Stiles, Finance Director. I put that together 2-3 weeks ago and forwarded on to several, but I didn't know I was the one responsible, so it was a communication.
We just want to
breakdown of
make sure
sorts.
it's complete. Lucinda's been gone for a couple weeks to finish her, the family's estate, but we'll get it out there.
Yeah, it was just a breakdown in communication with us. I apologize for that.
No, that's fine.
And we can actually put out all of that information through the channels that we've established with communication with the neighborhood.
Okay,
Yeah, we get that out tomorrow, too.
that'd be
Yeah,
great.
that's
Okay.
not an issue for us to get it posted through all of our different channels and to send an email with that information to everybody.
Okay,
Clyde, there were several people at the previous council meetings that expressed interest in being on this expanded implementation committee.
Yeah.
And I got the email notice, calendar appointment today, and noticed that it's just the implementation committee. So why wasn't those people, or why weren't those people notified that this meeting's coming up in a week?
Well, we wanted to make sure that that is the direction the council wanted to go. And if as I mentioned, if the council decides, yes, we want to proceed with that, then it would be our intent to send a notice to everybody, again, on our mailing list and through social media channels, that there would be a steering committee meeting coming up on next Monday. So I didn't want to go sending out a whole bunch of notices for a meeting that may not occur. So I wanted to get direction from council that that's how they wanted us to proceed.
I thought we'd made it clear a month ago that that's what we were going to do.
yeah, I thought, Clyde, the three groups, I thought they were each going to nominate 3 people from each of the 3 groups, and then we're going to add them to the implementation committee.
Yes.
So have the groups submitted names of who they want as their 3 reps?
Okay.
So Tom, we talked about the 3 groups down there. They were each going to nominate 3 people, and we were going to add those 9 to the implementation committee.
Oh,
If
Well, I
we
think-
don't have the recommendation, I mean, if we don't have who they want their reps to be, that's a
okay,
different
well,
issue.
Well, I think that was going to be a discussion that the implementation committee was going to have, right? I mean, you got to have this implementation committee meeting first and then get the recommendations from people and then go from there.
yeah, if we want to, certainly, we want to expand membership and stuff of the group. I know that's something that we've discussed, but, I need to,
Again, I thought we had made that clear a month ago
Yeah.
that we were going to expand this.
This is Renee. I too want to echo the sentiments of Councilman Trevilian, that we did make a decision that we would have enhanced representation above and beyond the implementation committee. And that these individuals that have an interest would submit their names. They'd fall into one of the 3 categories. And we also said that just because they're listed, don't mean they're going to be on it, because we want diversity on that committee in terms of representation from all views. But I do think there is an element of the community that is feeling like the city isn't quite in sync yet with who are these engaged citizen representation. We do need to move on that. I thought there was a group that had submitted some names, maybe not all, but that's the part that I think is the most critical, that that citizens want to see, is representation outside of the implementation committee. And that we would review the names, make sure there's good cross-section.
so I'm clear on direction, okay, because I've heard
Okay.
a couple different comments here. So as far as original thought was, the implementation committee was going to be the core, and then we were going to add to that.
Okay.
Now, so then how large of a group are we talking about in terms of representation from the 3 different segments?
We said
Be more
3
people.
3 people from
3
each of the 3 groups, so there's
3
9
total.
people. Yeah, 9,
Okay.
no, 3 from
9
each group, so there's 9
9 more.
people plus the implementation
Okay,
committee.
9, okay, that's what I wanted to clarify,
Right.
to make sure that we
Yeah.
were talking
It
about.
was
Okay.
3 out of each of those.
We can, then tomorrow morning, then I can get notice out to the 3 different groups, asking them for additional representation. And if we need to move, that's why I said a tentative meeting in terms of a steering committee.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure that I had all the direction from council. Now, So then there would not have to be any concurrence from council then as to the additional members that are appointed to the steering committee then. So if each group is independent in terms of if they want to submit or have 3 additional people on, then.
Did we vote on the implementation committee when that was set up? Does anybody
No,
remember?
we did not.
No, it was people that were, that expressed interest out of the master plan
Right, okay.
steering committee that said that they were interested in being on the implementation.
I just wanted to make sure, because I didn't know if
Yeah.
you wanted that group, the nominees, to come back to council, get
I
authorization.
mean, to Renee's point, we just asked the groups to get representative
Okay.
people that are going to be positive, so that we can have a good conversation
Sure.
and hopefully get the right outcome.
Okay.
But to use their good judgment on who their 3 reps were going to be.
And
Yeah,
that's easy enough to do.
Yeah, and if there were 5 that was wanting to be recommended from one group, we do have to make some decisions to make sure that, you know, it's 3, 3, and 3, and that there's good representation of thought, of and all of that, so that we got good representation of
And
thoughts.
I'll make sure that when I communicate with the groups, that they understand that that's what the council is looking for.
Yeah.
Okay? No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay? Anything else that the council,
No, but I think if you can get that information loaded,
okay?
that'd be great.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Council reports, Matt, we'll start with you.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. We had I'll say, extended development planning subcommittee meeting this morning. I guess the takeaway is there's a lot of great things happening in the community, a lot of development. We talked about, I think, what staff had referred to as a super block and potentially 5,000 units in a roughly 600-acre area that is really not yet developed. And so a lot of good things happening. It was an extended conversation. I think we're heading down the right path. And so I just happy to report that a lot of good things are happening. So
Good.
that's all this
All
time.
right, Kevin?
Nothing this time, no.
Russ?
The only thing I would add is that coming from DART, we renewed Elizabeth Brazudi's contract for another 5 years. So that's good news. She will be on as CEO of DART for another 5 years.
Okay. Greg?
I had an opportunity, Shane Radcliffe showed me around the new Recplex, and we are less than 2 months away from our first event. It's a goalie camp. I didn't play ice hockey, so that's not my area of expertise, but apparently it's going to be exciting for them to get on the ice for the very first time, and then the second ice ring will open up a few weeks after that. So it was just really exciting to see that we are getting closer and closer. So I want to thank Shane and, of course, the entire Parks and Rec department for making this happen, because this is going to be a wonderful 300,000 square foot facility. So really excited about that.
Okay, Renee?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to share that, yes, I attended the Planning and Development Marathon meeting this morning with Councilman McKinney, but there is really some exciting things going on as it relates to development around that area and around DMU. So lots more discussions to be had, but my goodness, there's just a keen interest in some exciting things that are to come. With the West Des Moines Library, I sit on their board, and Saturday, June 12th, we're asking everyone to come out from 10 to 4 to come out to the renovation celebration. You know, our library was closed and was renovated for quite some time. That work is completed, the interior renovation. So come out, have some treats from 10 to 4 on Saturday to see the new library. Public safety, Councilman Trimble and I attended that past Friday. We heard about a wonderful partnership with the EMS department and DMAC, and they are targeting high school students who can take classes and work towards their certification in EMS, and this is phenomenal. It's going to be a wonderful program. It's going to start in the fall. Classes are going to be taught, and it's really an innovative, creative way to expose our young people to some great careers. And what better partnership to have than DMAC, and them being right there at the school, and having our professionals from our own EMS department out there helping. So I'm really excited about that partnership. And then also, Councilman Trimble and I also attended the police department to discuss moving away. West Pet is going to be moving away from servicing Clive and Urbandale and the pet control and the licensing. And I'm a pet lover, so I just want to make sure those communities are still able to use furry friends and whatnot. So I think they will. They'll work out those arrangements. But Discussions were underway about, there are 4 officers right now in West Pat that perform these services for Clive and Urbandale and West Des Moines. We are going to just be serving West Des Moines. So Russ and I both wanted the chief to share with us, now that we're not serving 2 municipalities, to be fair and prudent, what are these officers going to be doing, and how will there be a realignment and reallocation of these officers? So I think that's our job and our role, to make sure that, again, we're being prudent and we're exercising some judgment as it relates to, if they're no longer serving 2 municipalities, what additional things they could be doing. So we'll hear more about that. So that concludes my comments for today.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to give some Chief Scott some recognition. Recently I received this message. This past month, Bureau Chief Trace Kendig from the Iowa DNR Law Enforcement Bureau sent me the following. Good evening, sir. I am the Bureau Chief for the Iowa DNR Law Enforcement Bureau. We lost Officer Steve Reghard to COVID in January of this year. Officer, I'm not pronouncing it right, possibly, I don't know. Reghard was assigned to Dickinson County. I responded to Northwest Iowa right when I heard about the officer's passing. This was classified as a line of duty death. Chief Scott arrived in Spirit Lake just a couple hours behind me. He was there to support me as our Bureau worked through this difficult time. Chief Scott was always right where he was needed, doing what needed to be done. He is a great representative for the West Des Moines PD and the City of West Des Moines. So this evening, the West Des Moines City Council and the City of West Des Moines would like to recognize Chief Chris Scott for his work as a member of the Executive Board for the Iowa Police Chiefs Association and his duties as a member of the Law Enforcement Death Response Team. Those duties include support Iowa agencies for a line of duty death or an unexpected death of a member of law enforcement throughout the state of Iowa. Chief Scott has traveled to different areas of the state and has been, as Bureau Chief Kendig said, always right where he was needed. Chief Scott is not only providing support to other agencies during their most difficult times, but is truly representing the City of West Des Moines and the law enforcement profession. Congratulations, Chief Scott. Thank you.
All right, item 4 is the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda any council member wants to pull? If not,
Yes, Mayor, 4G.
4G.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to move the rest of them out?
So moved.
Second.
All right, please vote.
Yes.
Okay, item 4G is a motion to approve the legal services letter of engagement for Spiegel and McDermott LLP for the FCC filing that MediaCom's made. So you want to abstain?
Correct.
Matt? Okay.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, please vote.
4 yes, 1 abstention due to potential conflict of interest.
Okay. Item 5 is old business. 5A, amendment to City Code, Title 9 zoning. Chapter 16, temporary use permits, add parameters for temporary drive-in theaters, city initiated. It's an ordinance for the second, third reading. Final adoption, there was a minor change to the first reading where seasonal was added to drive-in theaters, and there's a differentiation between a temporary use at Valley West, like at Valley West Mall, versus a permanent use. So with that minor change, the rest of the ordinances as was voted on the first reading.
Move for consideration, second reading.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
I just got one question. I mean, I'm very much in favor of this, but I'm just wondering, it's my understanding that, and I was out of town this past weekend, but it's my understanding that they actually had a movie up there this past weekend.
Yes, it was.
So I'm just curious, not that I was against it, I'd have been there if I was in town, but how is that able to happen when we don't even allow it? I'm just a little confused.
Long way from back there. Lynn Tweet, Director of Development Services. They are actually using one of the malls' temporary use permits for this event.
Okay. Good enough, thank you.
And it also received some very positive coverage and wonderful comments, and people were happy, and it was exciting, and so it's a great attraction.
I hope they continue and I'd like to see more.
Right away. Great attraction.
Okay, please vote.
5 yes, ordinance amending the city code of the city of West Des Moines, Iowa, 2019, Title 9 zoning, Chapter 16, temporary use permits pertaining to temporary uses.
Move for approval of second reading?
Second.
All right, please vote.
5 yes.
Move to waive the third reading and adopt in final form?
Second.
All right, please vote.
5 yes.
Item 5B, amendment to City Code Title 9 zoning, Chapter 3, general zoning provisions, modify regulations pertaining to the use of legal nonconforming buildings or structures. City initiated, this is an ordinance for the third reading, final adoption. There are no changes from the first reading.
Move consideration of the second reading.
Second.
Questions or comments? All right, please vote.
5 yes, an ordinance amending the city code of the city of West Des Moines, Iowa, 2019, Title 9 zoning, Chapter 3, general zoning provisions, Section 4, nonconforming buildings, structures, uses of land, or uses of buildings or structures.
Move approval of the second reading.
All right, please vote.
5 yes.
Move approval of third reading and adopt in final form, waiving the third.
Second.
All right, please vote.
5 yes.
All right, item 6, public hearings. We have a number of those tonight. Item 6A, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider Village on Jordan Creek, southwest corner of Jordan Creek Parkway and Ashworth Road, amend the comprehensive plan land use map, amend the plan unit development to designate and regulate support commercial within development parcel A, and modify parcel B from RM8 to RM12 for medium density residential development initiated by Jordan Creek Associates LLC. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
May 18th, 2021, in the Des Moines Register.
Have you received any written comments?
The Planning and Zoning Commission, by a vote of 4 yes, 1 abstaining, and 2 were absent, adopted a resolution recommending approval of the comp plan amendment and PUD amendment.
All right, now would be the time for anyone in the audience that would like to address the city council on item 6A. Seeing no one, I'll declare.
Nope.
Oh, sorry.
Short, Mayor, sorry.
All right.
That's all I got.
No worries. All right.
Mayor and City Council, thank you. My name's Greg Bentley. I live at 7134 Dakota Drive in West Des Moines. My wife and I built our house in '95, so obviously we're very familiar with all the development that's happened. I was a little bit surprised. I was excited to see that Ruth Chris was coming in, great capture. I just don't think that this spot is the right place for that development. I mean, I look along Jordan Creek Parkway, lived there, well, it's all been developed, and it just seemed like it's a bad fit there. I mean, there's nothing like that along Jordan Creek Parkway. I mean, there's no apartments along there. Fast food restaurants, yes. And I think Ruth Chris, you know, I'd like to see him go in Bravo and fight it out with Fleming's, but that's not gonna happen. But I really, truly believe, I've been thinking about this, it belongs up on Mills Parkway. It belongs up near the town center. I think there's a lot of room up there for that development. And just to have this restaurant, or particularly the apartments right there, I just don't think that's a really good fit for my area. If the restaurant, maybe, but, you know, it just doesn't seem like a good fit.
Okay.
So
Appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys' time and everything you guys do.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else for the public hearing? Okay. Seeing no one else, I'll declare the public hearing closed. We have 2 items that we have to take separately. The first is a resolution to approve the comprehensive plan amendment. And I know that these items came through the Development and Planning Council Subcommittee through their May 3rd committee meeting with a unanimous recommendation.
Yep, Mayor, they did come through. We had no concerns that were raised there. Frankly, we spent a significant period of time at that point working through several different items. I think we all arrived, both the developer and the city staff arrived at a consensus as to this project and moved it forward without issue.
Okay. You want to move it, Matt?
Yep, I'd so move.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so any questions or comments on the comp plan amendment? Okay, please vote.
Five yes.
Okay, then the second item is the ordinance for the first reading. I just guess for clarification, the recommendation is approval, but to leave parcel B as RM8, and then if the developer has a plan that comes in with higher density, then it would be looked at as a part of the plan. I just want to make sure we understand exactly what the recommendation is. Okay. So the recommendation is to leave the density for parcel B as 8 units per acre. And obviously, if the developer ultimately thinks they need higher density, they can come back through the process for discussion about it. So that's the recommendation from planning and zoning.
I'd move consideration of the first reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or comments on the ordinance? Okay, please vote.
Five yes, an ordinance amending the city code of the city of West Des Moines, Iowa, 2019, and ordinance number 2445 pertaining to plan unit development, district regulations, and guidelines.
Move approval of the first reading.
Second. All right, please vote.
Five yes.
Okay, so then in 2 weeks, we'll have the second and the third reading and final adoption of the ordinance. Item 6B, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider Microsoft DSM 14, east of Veterans Parkway at Southeast Moffett Lake Road, amend the comprehensive plan land use map, and amend the zoning map to consistency zone the property to light industrial zoning, initiated by Microsoft Corporation. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
May 18th, 2021, in the Des Moines Register.
Have we received any written comments?
The Planning and Zoning Commission, by a vote of 5 yes, 2 were absent, adopted a resolution recommending approval of the comp plan amendment and rezoning request.
Okay, now would be the time for anyone in the audience who would like to address the city council on item 6B. Okay, seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Again, we have 2 items we have to take separately. The first is a resolution to approve the comp plan and indicates there's no outstanding issues, and this came through the Development and Planning Council Subcommittee with unanimous recommendation as well.
Move approval of the comp plan amendment.
Second.
Questions or comments on the comprehensive plan amendment? Okay, please vote.
Five yes.
Move consideration of the first reading of the rezoning.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or comments on the ordinance? Okay, please vote.
Five yes, an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city code of West Des Moines, Iowa, 2019 by amending Title IX zoning, Chapter 4 zoning districts and maps.
Move approval of the first reading.
Second.
All right, please vote.
Five yes.
Item 6C, the council's being asked to withdraw this item tonight. We had a noticing error, so it's going to get re-noticed, and it'll be brought back as a public hearing after the notices, the new notice is issued.
Move to withdraw item 6C.
Second.
All right, please vote.
Five yes.
Item 6D, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider agreement for private development, 301 5th Street, initiated by First National Bank. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
May 28th, 2021, in the Des Moines Register.
Have you received any written comments?
None, Your Honor.
All right, now would be the time for anyone in the audience who would like to address the city council on item 6D. Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. This is a resolution to approve the agreement, and this came through the Finance and Administration Council Committee with the unanimous recommendation as well.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Questions or comments on the agreement? All right, please vote.
Five yes.
All right, item 6E, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider agreement for private development, 304 5th Street, initiated by Junction Development Catalyst LLC. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
May 28th, 2021, in the Des Moines Register.
Okay, now would be the time for anyone in the audience who'd like to address the city council on item 6E. I know we've had a lot of conversations about this project, so I guess we'll open the floor first to Scott Cutler as the applicant, if he would like to make a presentation first, and then we'll open the floor up for other comment.
Thank you, Mayor. Scott Cutler, 304 Fifth Street. And I know we're on the agenda later as well for our site plan approval, but we can have a conversation now if you, okay. I
Well, why don't I do this, Scott? Maybe most of the comments might come in form of the site plan. So let me first see if anybody, because then we can just take them all. If no one wants to make any public comment on the agreement itself, then we'll just go ahead and act on that, and then we'll wait until we get to the site plan. So is there anyone in the audience that'd like to address the city council on the approval of the agreement, which is the subject of 6E? Okay. Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed, and this also came through the Finance and Administration Council Committee with a recommendation. So I need a motion to approve the agreement.
Move approval.
Second.
Any other questions or comments on the agreement?
Question.
Okay.
All right, this is an agreement between the City of West Des Moines and Junction Development Catalyst LLC. And one of the requirements is that Junction Development Catalyst will guarantee the creation and retention of 5 full-time equivalent jobs. I'm curious as to what 5 full-time jobs Junction Catalyst is going to have at this location.
Mayor, Clyde Evans, Community Economic Development Director. The 5 full-time jobs the jobs that are located at that location. And in this particular case, as well as other projects that we had similar to this, it is a tenant. If they have a tenant, a retail space, and they have a tenant, the tenant is required to provide those 5 jobs.
And why isn't the tenant listed on this? Because this agreement that we're approving is between Junction Catalyst and the city, not a tenant. And it says that they will guarantee. So I'm just,
And
we get the same thing with the next item.
They're basically guaranteeing that their tenant will provide the employment there. And if they do not provide the employment, then they do not get the property tax rebate.
And who follows up on that, and how often does it get followed up on?
It's required annual certification. That's part of the development agreement. And so because of how we pay property taxes in arrear, we'll know before any property tax rebate is issued whether or not they've met the employment requirement.
And I
So
think
they have to supply it to us, or do we go to them and get a certified?
We actually, there was a
list?
form actually in the development agreement that they're required to submit to us. We always do notify anybody that we have a property tax agreement with that, hey, make sure you get your forms in, it's due. And we do follow up on those on a regular basis.
Well, I still think, though, that somehow it needs to say that it falls back on the tenant. The wording of it indicates that Junction Catalyst, and then the next one, the Taxium, is going to have full-time jobs.
Yeah, and I mean, it's similar to like what we've done other projects, all 3 of the projects on tonight, other than First
Well, the
National
bank's
Bank.
going to have, that's not an issue. The bank's had employees, they'll retain those employees.
And in terms of the agreements, it's very similar to like the 2 agreements that we had on A Street with that project, so.
in reality, how it works, the developer then, in their agreements with their tenants, build this in. So the developer's motivated to get the tenants contractually bound to provide these jobs, and the developer's motivated to get the certification in on time, because if they don't get the rebate check.
Right.
So.
We have a very big carrot and stick approach there.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions on the agreement? Okay, please vote.
Four yes, 1 no.
Okay, the agreement's approved. Item 6F, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider agreement for private development 309 and 315 Fifth Street, initiated by Taxium LLC. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
May 28th, 2021 in the Des Moines Register.
Have you received any written comments?
None, Your Honor.
All right, now would be the time for anyone in the audience who would like to address the city council on item 6F. Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Indicates there's no outstanding issues, and this also came through Finance and Administration Council Committee with the unanimous recommendation.
Move approval.
Second.
Questions or comments? All right, please vote.
Four yes, one no.
Okay, the agreement's approved. Item 6G, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider Digital Enterprise Conduit Deployment Segment 3, Phase 3, initiated by the City of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
May 28th, 2021 in the Des Moines Register.
Have you received any written comments?
There was one correspondence received from MediaCom, which has been placed on the dais this evening.
Okay. Now would be the time for anyone in the audience that'd like to address council on item 6G. We'll make sure the MediaCom letter is part of the proceedings on 6G as well. Okay. Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. We have two resolutions and a motion which we can take together, and this came through the Public Services Council Committee with the unanimous recommendation.
Move approval.
Second.
Questions or comments? All right, please vote.
Four yes, one abstention due to potential conflict of interest.
All right, it's item 6H. This is the time and place for a public hearing to consider Digital Enterprise Conduit Deployment Segment 4, Phase 1, initiated by the City of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
May 28th, 2021 in the Des Moines Register.
And have we received any written comments?
Just that one correspondence that was placed on the dais this evening.
Okay, and we'll make sure that MediaCom's letter is part of the proceedings for 6H as well. This is a public hearing item, so if there's anyone in the audience that would like to address the City Council on item 6H. Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Again, we have two resolutions and a motion which we can take together, and this came through the Public Services City Council Committee with the unanimous recommendation as well.
Move for approval.
Second.
Questions or comments? Okay, please vote.
Four yes, one abstention due to potential conflict of interest.
6I, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider South 35th Street, Grand Valley Drive culverts, initiated by the City of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
May 28th, 2021 in the Des Moines Register.
Have you received any written comments?
None, Your Honor.
All right, now would be the time for anyone in the audience who would like to address the City Council on item 6I. Okay, seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Again, we have two resolutions and a motion which we can take together, and this also came through the Public Services Council Committee with the unanimous recommendation.
Move approval.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I just want to thank staff for taking a look at this and studying this. A constituent of mine, Terry Gray, had brought up some issues with the drainage in this area and that things weren't really draining the way that they should. I know there were other residents in the area that had some issues as well. So this is going to be a great thing to move that water and get it going where it should be. So thank you so much to staff.
Brian, I've got one question. Brian Hemseth still here?
He's here.
Brian Hemseth, City Engineer.
In looking at this, and I know we had some discussion at the previous Public Services Council Committee meeting about stormwater. What is this going to do to the creek that this is going to dump into? Is this what's around this creek and what's it going to do to it?
It's going to get there, the same amount of water is going to go there because it either overtop the road or it's going to go through the pipe. So,
Okay. So we're not going to have any increased water?
Not in this location.
Just going to take it from over the top of the road, put it in into the culvert and
yeah,
stop the flooding.
Yeah, seeing this happening for 18 years and I want.
I know, I'm just.
Yeah, we need to
Just
get
the
it.
discussion we had as far as causing erosion and stuff. I'm just trying to make sure that we're not increasing anything into that creek, so.
No.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, please vote.
Five yes.
All right, item 6J, the council's being asked to withdraw this item from the agenda tonight.
Move withdrawal of item 6J.
Second.
All right, please vote.
5 yes.
Item 6K, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider the 2021 street repair retainer contract initiated by the city of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
May 21st, 2021 in the Des Moines Register.
Have you received any written comments?
None, Your Honor.
All right, now would be the time for anyone in the audience that would like to address the city council on item 6K. Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Again, we have two resolutions and a motion which we can take together. And this also came through the Public Services City Council Committee with unanimous recommendation.
Move approval.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Okay, please vote.
5 yes.
6L, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider the 88th Street and Ashworth Road traffic signal initiated by the city of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
May 28th, 2021 in the Des Moines Register.
Have you received any written comments?
None, Your Honor.
All right, now would be the time for anyone in the audience that would like to address the city council on item 6L. Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. The first resolution is to approve the plans and specifications. The second one is, motion is to receive and file the report of bids. It's noted that the low bidder's bid should be rejected as non-responsive, and then the resolution to award the contract would be to the second low bidder. And this came through the Public Services City Council Committee with unanimous recommendation as well.
Move approval.
Second.
Any other questions or comments?
This stoplight will be very, very exciting for the folks who are living on the northwest portion of the city, so they don't have to wait for all that Ashworth traffic. So a lot of enthusiasm about that future stoplight, along with the paving of 88th Street. It's going to be delightful.
It's all good. All right, please vote. It's taken a while.
A little bit.
Good things are worth waiting for.
Excited, huh?
5 yes.
Okay, item 7, new business. 7A, the Preserve Estate Plat 2, west side of Southwest Grand Prairie Parkway, south of the Raccoon River. Approval of a preliminary plat to create 26 lots for single-family residential development, 3 outlots and 1 street lot, Raccoon River Land Development Company, LLC. It's a resolution to approve the preliminary plat, and there's no outstanding issues.
Move approval.
Second.
Questions or comments? All right, please vote.
5 yes.
7B, West Lakes Office Park, Plat 15, southwest corner of University Avenue and 71st Street. Approval of a preliminary plat to create 2 lots for commercial development, Forright LC and West Lakes Commercial LLC. It's a resolution to approve the preliminary plat, and there's no outstanding issues.
Move approval.
Second.
Questions or comments? Okay, please vote.
5 yes.
7C, Oaks at Grand, 5725, 5745, and 5785 Raccoon River Drive. Approval of a preliminary plat to create 2 lots for office development, 2 street lots, and approval of a phase site plan to allow implementation of footings, foundations, and private utilities for the construction of an office building, JCG Equity LLC. This is a resolution to approve the preliminary plat and site plan, and there are no outstanding issues.
Move approval.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I've got a question. As looking at this map, the subject property is between Boonville and Grand. It's at the intersection of Raccoon River Drive. So I'm wondering, how does it get a Raccoon River Drive address?
Raccoon River Drive will extend north up to Boonville.
Gotcha.
He just told you, didn't
He
he?
just told me. Got it,
For
okay.
everybody else, the road will be extended.
I
up
got
to
it,
that
okay.
street.
Thank you.
All right, please vote.
5 yes.
7D, Microsoft DSM 40, 11100 Boonville Road. Approval of a preliminary plat to create 2 lots for industrial development, and approval of a phase site plan to allow implementation of footings, foundations, private utilities, and associated electric substation related to the construction of a data center building, Microsoft Corporation. This is a resolution to approve the preliminary plat and site plan. There's no outstanding issues.
Move approval.
Second.
Questions or comments? All right, please vote.
5 yes.
Okay. 70, Valley Junction Mixed Use, 304 Fifth Street, approval of a site plan to allow construction of a 10,559 gross square foot mixed use structure, Junction Development Catalyst LLC. It's a resolution to approve the site plan. And Scott will open the floor up to you first. I guess, Ryan, we can make an observation that we got a lot of additional memorandums and letters of support and opinion letters before the council meeting tonight, which will be made part of the record. Correct?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Scott, welcome.
Thank you. Yep, Scott Cutler, 304 Fifth Street. I'm the developer on this project, and I've worked hard to meet with residents of Valley Junction to ensure that it's the best project that it can be. Our project is entirely code compliant, and city staff has recommended approval. There are many people here tonight in support of the project. To save us a little bit of time, I thought I'd just have them stand up quickly. Thank you. You can go ahead and sit back down. Thank you.
I recognize a lot of the faces and a lot of the support letters, so.
Yep. And I also brought 50 letters of support from different West Des Moines residents. I also have 2 letters written by professional historians who support the historic design of the building exterior. I understand that we're in the beginning of a revisioning process for the master plan in Valley Junction, and this could result in additional future design guidelines and maybe some changes to the zoning code. And I'm really supportive of this process. But this project, which we're here for today, has been designed to be entirely compliant with the existing zoning code as it's written today, and we're here asking for your approval of that site plan and ask that we not discuss the future of development in Valley Junction. Before I introduce my design team, I'd like to just say one last thing. Not only is this project entirely code compliant and has city staff's recommendation for approval, we've also gone a long ways to design something that goes above and beyond the minimum requirements. This project has won a design award that no other project in Iowa's history has ever won. The award is called the U.S. Forest Service Wood Innovations Grant, and it is for an environmentally progressive structural design. Now, I know this sounds pretty far into the weeds, and structural design may not seem to be that important to a lot of people. But I think it's important because it illustrates my approach to these projects. We're going way beyond the minimum requirements. I know history is important to a lot of people in Valley Junction. It's why I myself and so many others like it there. And someday when we're telling the history of the neighborhood, I think we could be proud to tell the story of this building and how it was a pioneer in environmental design for the state of Iowa right here in Valley Junction. So thank you for your time. I'd like to turn it over to Daniel Wilrick, our project architect, to quickly run through the technical design. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Scott. I've got a quick presentation here,
Okay.
and hopefully I do this correctly.
Do you mind, again, sharing your name and your address for us?
Sure. I am Daniel Wilrick. I'm with Pelds Design Services. I'm the architect on this project. We're at 2323 Dixon Street in Des Moines. Somewhere on here, I can turn this into a slideshow. There. Yeah. You can even see my next slide too, I guess. I know we've had a lot of conversation about this project. All of you should have got a lot of information about the project ahead of time, a report that was put together. Some of you got to sit in on a pretty extensive presentation about the project. Hopefully you found it useful. I'm just gonna pull out a few of those points tonight, just because I spent 10 years on the city council. These meetings need to be efficient, I get it. So we'll run through these really quick. First is just a summary of the project, right? We're at 304 Fifth Street, which is north of Elm Street on the west side of Fifth. It's a mixed-use project. Our exterior materials consist of natural slate tiles, storefront glass, factory-painted, non-rusting metal panels. And we're gonna install those metal panels in 2 different ways to help just, again, break up some of the elevations that we're doing here. And as Scott mentioned, an innovative mass timber structure is a part of this project. Building height is an issue that's important to discuss. Chapter 9.7.4, table 7.6 says that we can have a building as tall as 36 feet in this zoning district. Our building is 36 feet tall, so we are code compliant with today's code. As a point of reference, there are 2 other existing buildings and 1 other approved building that match that 3-story height on that same block. So I don't think we're out of context or out of character with our height. In fact, one of those buildings in terms of area is significantly larger than our project. I think another thing that's important to point out as far as the height in relationship to the neighborhood is next to our site is commercial use. Other sites are next to residential, so just the direct impact to the residents we think is much less significant with our project because of that. Parking is another hot topic for this location. Again, the current zoning does not require us to have on-site parking at this location. We do understand parking is important though. You can see the map that we have here shows all the orange boxes are all the places where public parking is allowed near us. And I think one important thing to point out is that if this is our site, we have directly adjacent to us a public parking lot. Some of the other projects can't say that. And so one of the things we wanted to do was just validate that use of that public lot. And so we did a study where we had someone observe that lot for the week of May 11th through May 17th, every day on the hour, taking photos, and Scott can provide those photos at some point if you guys would like it. But the chart that you see on that slide, it's a little bit of an eye chart, but basically across the bottom is the hour of the day. On the left side vertically is the percentage of use of that parking lot that's directly behind us, again, the spot right here. And then each colored bar is a different day. So with the exception of the gray bar, you can see that we rarely get over 20%, even hard time getting over 10% usage, right? So on average, our study shows that that lot is 88% vacant. If you take out the gray bar, and what's the gray bar? That's Thursday, right? That's farmer's market. There's nothing down there on Thursday. So we take that out of the equation and you can see that really parking in that lot is not gonna cause us an issue. So moving on to the historical context, that's another item. Of course, the city had their workshop in early May where they talked about projects in Valley Junction. They talked about 4 different types of projects. Infill is the type of project that we would fit in this based on that discussion. And you all can see the definition there of what infill is. I'm not going to read it because I'm going to touch on it on future slides, but we also wanted to validate our claim that we are historically contextual here. And so we talked to a couple of folks that are in tune with historical architecture. One of those gentlemen is a James Spiller. He's a practicing architect and a professor at Iowa State University. He's the director of the Master of Real Estate program up there. And he spent a lot of time in his career working on historic preservation. And the second quote on this slide is his professional opinion that the building design does fit contextually, historically, with the context of the neighborhood that we're in. The other gentleman, Charles Irwin, he is a professor at DMACC. He spent 22 years as the director of the Iowa Historical Society. And as you can see in the letter that Scott provided, he did spend a lot of time studying previous documentation of the neighborhood and other resources as he explored our project. And the first quote on the slide there is his opinion that, again, what we claim is a valid claim, that we are historically sensitive. So quickly, one of the tenets of that infill type of project is that new buildings should be identifiable to the period of their construction. So this project, we use massing and other sort of details that are consistent with today's trends. We're using sustainable and natural materials, which again is a very important topic in building right now. And as Scott mentioned, the mass timber structure it's the first, there's a handful of mass timber structures in the state. This will be the first mass timber structure in the state of Iowa that's part of an apartment or a multifamily residential type project. So we're making history here in Valley Junction with this project, as well as Scott mentioned, the first in the state of Iowa to get that grant or that award for a mass timber type project. Another tenet of that infill design is that projects should not be so different that they detract from the context. You guys can read the whole statement there. And what we're trying to show with this slide is how our building compares visually in scale and in the sort of elements and detailing that were used to two other very historic projects that are existing today. The first one on the left being the theatrical shop, the second one on the right being the Winchester. All three of these projects have a lot of glass on the first floor, storefront type glass. All three of these projects use just a punched opening on the upper floors. They all have some sort of detailing at the top of the wall. They all have some sort of detailing, above the first floor. They're all using natural materials, a clay-fired unit and a brick versus a natural slate tile. So you can see, I think if the two buildings on the left and right were renderings in the same style as our rendering, you wouldn't be able to tell which one's new and which one's existing. So this, I'm not going to read all of these, but what we're trying to show with this slide, and you can see the next slide, is we've got like 16 elements here, I think it is, that through the course of design, at Scott's direction, working with city staff and other city entities as well as citizens groups, has made changes to this project, trying to find a common ground. I think in some way, and this might be more of a personal opinion versus the professional presentation I'm supposed to be giving here, but I think because of Scott's really, I would say his love for the neighborhood, the fact that he actually lives in the neighborhood, he's not an outside developer that's just coming in to throw up some projects and make some money. The fact that he's doing all of these things to help sort of work with people, I think the area is lucky because another developer might not do that. I'm not saying that no developer would be that sensitive, but certainly somebody from out of town could just come in and plant something in there and not go to this effort. So I think that is certainly a big consideration for everybody to understand that he's made a lot of sacrifices and changes on this project to help smooth things out and make it a successful project. So.
And Daniel, these are changes after the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, right?
Some of them were changes that we had made along the way, but because of the format of planning and zoning, we didn't necessarily get the chance to do this kind of a presentation with them.
Okay.
So I would say maybe 50% of these were before and maybe, 50% or so, 40% were after. So a little bit of mix there. And that's the rest of the list. And then finally, in summary, we just want to reiterate, this project does meet the existing code. Scott said it a couple times, I said it a couple times. We are at the maximum building height allowed. We are not required to have on-site parking, but we do have parking close. We do feel that we're consistent with the surrounding historic design, and we have two experts that agree. We do have recommendation from city staff to approve, and as Scott mentioned too, this mass timber, that's an exciting thing for the area that they get to have this one-of-a-kind building as a part of their fabric, so. Okay. Any questions for me or move on to?
I might see if we get everybody's comments or comments, and then we can go back and see if there are any questions.
Need to stop sharing.
I want to make sure that Scott, is there anyone else that's going to present anything on your behalf before I ask for other comments? Okay. All right. Okay.
How do I unshare? Stop sharing. There we go. Figured it out.
My name's Ralph Haskins. I'm at 729 Fifth Street, West Des Moines. And the one question that I have, I'd like to direct it to Scott, is I know this weekend you were over at the one facility because there were some parking issues that created some problems at the car show. And I appreciate apparently the way you addressed it was really great. But out of that conversation, did I hear that you had indicated that you would put in the lease no on-street parking for those apartments?
Sorry, what was the question?
Did you indicate that in your lease agreement with the tenants, that there would be no on-site, on-street parking?
We make it really clear to our tenants that they're not allowed to park on the street. The other piece of that too is, the, like, city, I guess I don't know the technical word, but it's illegal to park there overnight. And that's something that the city, can enforce by ticketing or towing cars.
Which it has not been being enforced by the police department as an FYI. Would it be possible, consideration, to make that as part of your development plan, that the tenants would be not required, part of the lease, not to park on the street? Because that would help alleviate problems for Nans and some of the other businesses around the corner there. They're really concerned about that in and out stuff.
Hey, first, Scott, Dick, I mean, if we have a city ordinance that precludes overnight parking, I mean, I don't know that a private developer can take any additional steps, correct? That's a city ordinance and it needs to be enforced.
Right. I mean, you can do whatever you'd like, but it still has to conform to the city ordinance. And so the 2 to 6 in the morning, nobody can park there, so.
Well, here's the thing I tell you, I mean, I haven't really researched it. I'm kind of on the spot right now. I don't want to commit one way or another.
Yeah.
But, I mean, when they called me on Sunday, I was there 5 minutes later, and
You were.
I'll do whatever I can to be a good neighbor and to make this work. And I'd be happy to meet with you or anyone else and talk about it further.
I guess the question would be, Meredith, would that be an acceptable consideration because of the concern by the merchants that on-street parking could be a problem or not?
Yeah.
We're gonna need
You need to come up,
whoever's
Meredith.
gonna speak needs to come up here and give us your name and address. But I don't think we want to get in a situation where private developers are trying to enforce city ordinances. So
Well, they
if it's a
wouldn't be.
parking problem, then the city needs to enforce it.
Yeah.
I think what Mr.
Opportunity there, though, I mean, if I could, I give Scott credit for making that part of the conversation on Sunday. I thought it was a very novel idea to help address the serious problem that Nance in particular has, and that is the on-street parking. There's on-street parking by a number of the tenants there right now, which Nathan documented. And this could be something that if he's indicating he's going to do that, would be really worthwhile in solving the problem. And the problem isn't parking. The problem is on-street parking that affects the retailers and the merchants. And so if he does that as part of the development plan, and he has, I think he may have indicated that or hinted at that idea, because I think that's where the idea came out of conversation with Nathan.
Yeah, but I mean, no other developer has that obligation. I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think it's fair to ask a private developer to do that. I think it's up to the city to enforce our parking requirements. And if people are in compliance, they're in compliance.
Solves a problem.
Not necessarily, but it shouldn't be his private enforcement of the issue.
Well, he already makes it clear to the tenants that they shouldn't be parking it on site. He does that just voluntarily, does a great job with that. I think from the sounds of it, you make an effort to do that.
Yeah, I think he can remind them what the city's requirements are and that they ought to abide by them. But if he puts it in his lease, we don't want you calling him, telling him he's got to enforce it, because it's a city enforcement.
It's a consideration.
But I think what Mr. Haskins is asking is that rather than, because Mr. Cutler indicated that, he tells them that they're not supposed to park on the street. He didn't say from 2 to 6, he said on the street. And what Mr. Haskins is asking is that because there's a city lot adjacent to it, requiring them to park in that lot, not on the street, which I'm not sure you could do. I don't know. I've had this conversation with Mr. Haskins that, by law, anybody can park on any street anywhere they want. I mean, I could drive my pickup and camping trailer and park it across the street from Mr. Haskins' lot for 24 hours, and even though I live
That's who Carl
30
was.
blocks away. And so I've had this conversation with him. I'm not sure that that's something that we can enforce, because it's a licensed vehicle, can park anywhere. I totally understand where you're coming from
Well, it's
and
a
think
thought
it's
to
a
solve
great
a problem.
solution. I'm just not sure that it's enforceable.
Well, and it's an enforcement nightmare. I mean, is he going to run plates? Are you going to run plates? How do you know who's parking there? I mean, that's a...
We have an ordinance, and this came up actually during our development and planning meeting. And I think I mentioned this to the folks that were there, to Mr. Cutler and others, that, hey, if we've got an ordinance, we need to enforce it. And if there is an ordinance, which we have on the books, that says you can't park there overnight, we ought to make sure that that doesn't happen, whether it's because it helps with snow removal or whether it ensures that somebody's not going to park there long-term to interfere with the small business owners that are seeking to do business in the area. I think we need to make sure that we enforce it.
I agree.
Thanks for
And-
letting me
and-
express the thought.
And I would say, Ralph, you've got a lot of good ideas with regards to the parking issue, and we've had discussions about that. I know you've had discussions with that with other council people as well. And, you know, that is something that we're going to be addressing as we go through this committee process. And, you know, I think you've got a lot of good ideas when it comes to parking. I'm just not sure that we can implement that right here, right now.
It was just a thought that.
Yeah.
I like the idea, I just don't know it's enforceable.
Portsmouth.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ralph.
All right, anyone else want to address the council on 7E? We'll just need you to come up to the podium and give us your name and your address.
Hello, my name is Sue Jensen. I'm a resident of West Des Moines at 2625 Vine Street. And I'm interested in the project that Mr. Cutler and the architect have presented tonight. And the pictures were very interesting. I'm a person who's interested in communities or places around the country that have a personality, or they're a certain place because they look a certain way. And my concern is, does the city council have a person who is a historical architect who is looking at the whole big picture of what all of this is going to look like when you're finished? And I thought that the illustration that you had of the buildings that are on Fifth Street near Railroad, where the theatrical shop is in the lower part, and the other buildings there, which are taller, which I, as a resident and an artist that did business in West Des Moines, I've never really looked at those buildings. Okay, so I think that somebody should be looking at how all of this fits into the whole picture of what West Des Moines is going to look like. Maybe somebody's done a drawing or something that says if these buildings are here and they look like those buildings that are down the street, how does it, even though it's a great architectural design, don't get me wrong, it's very good, but when we look at all of West Des Moines, there must be a period of time that it represents. It represents bigger buildings, but smaller buildings, and even houses that are in that area. So that it must be that somehow these things all fit together to make a famous neighborhood. Because we want to be as famous as Country Club Plaza in Kansas City. We want to be like the old city in Philadelphia. We want that for West Des Moines. And somebody needs to be paying attention to the even bigger picture. Because you have a block, you have a piece that's going to go in here, and I can see that you've given a lot of time to making it be appropriate and that it has proper materials. But to me, as an average citizen, I don't see the whole picture yet. So I'm hoping that somebody in West Des Moines has hired somebody that is an historical architect who can look at how this all fits together. So I hope that we're doing that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Thanks, Sue. I hope you sign up for the committee.
Beth Wilcox, 1129 Walnut Street. I would just like to say that I appreciate all the effort that Scott's gone through to try to listen to the community. Are you going to live in that building once you're done? Are you going to stay with us?
Yeah, I'll definitely stay in Valley Junction. I don't know if I'll stay in that building particularly.
Okay. I'm trying to picture the picture that you have of the building is really beautiful. I'm trying to picture what it's going to look like between isn't there like a house on one side and then like Nan's on the other side?
Yeah,
Do you
there's
have?
a kind of residential style office building on one side, and then more of a commercial style. That's where Nancy Nummy's is located on the other side.
That would have been a great picture for you to have, to see, so we could actually visualize what it's gonna look like with the other buildings, because, and to the city council, I would just like to say, we need to keep this discussion going, because I think that we kind of reached a point where there was a lot of maybe lack of communication, and we're all adults. We all have the city of West Des Moines in our heart. We want to see it be beautiful and successful. So I would just like to see this communication staying open so that we can all get on the same page.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Beth.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, I'm Kevin Croft, a resident of West Des Moines at 214 South 33rd Street. And when I think of Valley Junction, I think it's an area that really honors the past and treasures it, but also has a strong eye on the future. I believe the city should really encourage redevelopment and thoughtful redevelopment in areas, and particularly in buildings that are pretty much beyond repair. Doing nothing equates to a slow and steady decline in the value of part of our city. For Valley Junction to be a vibrant local destination with a variety of entertainment, housing, dining, shopping options that draws people from throughout the whole region, it needs redevelopment. Development raises property values, public interest, and regional relevance. For those points, I support this project and appreciate what the team is trying to do there. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin.
Good evening. My name is Dean Brooks. I live at 541 34th Street, and I'm here to express my support for the project. And just by way of quick background, I am a fourth-generation West Des Moines resident, very proud of that. I've watched the Valley Junction area change over the years since the 1950s, when my mom and dad took me there to shop, and it was a vibrant merchant community back then, all the way to where it is now in 2021. I believe this project will contribute to the progress going forward. I've talked to Scott in some detail last week about the project, and I think specifically it is a good project for the 300 block of Fifth Street, both in the appearance and in the occupancy. And then just to tag on a little bit onto the parking, which obviously is a concern. And before I do that, full and open disclosure, I do not have a business on Fifth Street, but my wife has Coffee Cats at 312 Fifth Street. So it's the old McLaren's funeral home, for those of you that go back as far as I do. It's just 2 doors up from the proposed project. And I think parking is going to be an issue we have to focus on in this situation. For example, the Mustang show on Sunday, there were 2 cars that belonged to one of the upstairs tenants at Coffee Cats, parked right in front of her sidewalk up. And it was a fairly easy resolution. I went up and banged on the door. 2 clueless young men, very nice, very nice. But I had to point out to them that they were in the middle of a car show. And they had a horrified look on their face and ran downstairs and immediately moved the cars to the back lot. So just one example, following up with what Mr. Haskins was saying earlier also. But having worked with Scott, I am very comfortable that between Scott and the city, that we'll be able to figure something out to avoid that Fifth Street parking. What it is tonight, I don't know. Tonight's not the appropriate time to do that. So with that, I'll conclude. Mr. Mayor, I don't know the protocol, but if there's anybody that wants to ask about the Cat Cafe and how My wife's not here. She chose to be Switzerland in this deal. And she's terrified of public speaking. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Well, you've done a good job of it.
Yeah, my daughter was down there and tried to bring a cat home.
She has adopted 400 cats.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, my daughter
Jeez.
showed me the picture on the wall of all of them, so. Anyone else want to share any comments with the council on item 7E?
Yeah, I'm Dave Sago, and Mayor, thanks, council members, thanks, and Scott, appreciate your consent to let me say something. But
Dave, why don't you share your address?
yeah, I'm at 219 South 33rd Street.
Okay.
We've been in West Des Moines for about 25 years. And I know when people come down to City Hall, they're usually pretty fired up, but usually that means they're not happy. I'm fired up for this project because I have a lot of connection to Valley Junction. As a background, our family has known Scott and the Cutlers for decades. You know, they're great members of the community, and out of that mold, you have Scott, who's not just talented, but he's very caring and very, very compassionate. And we were thrilled when Scott decided to bring his talents back here and to dedicate himself to this community, because I know that Scott's interests and his actions are aligned with our collective interests and what we want for West Des Moines. And you couldn't ask for a better profile for a developer than have somebody like Scott, who has so much pride in our community. And as we raised our 4 kids here, we're not native to West Des Moines. First time I came to Valley Junction was in 1976 with a busload of kids from Boone High School to see the Freedom Train. Okay, but as we raised our family here, we were always drawn to Valley Junction. We're drawn because it reminds us of our hometown, reminds us of Boone, reminds us of Hubbard. And you know, it's because of that our kids have a connection. This is their hometown. And we have gone there for a lot of things, whether it's bite to eat or getting together or getting our shoes repaired, or where my wife gets her yarn or whatever it is. But the single best reason we go to Valley Junction is to get together with our children. Because 3 or 4 of our children have come back to Des Moines, and we get together there with them because that's where they want to get together. And that is key to this discussion. As you know, Valley Junction is a historic and nostalgic bridge between generations. It is something special that connects us. Scott has a very well-conceived project, a vision that is a great improvement on the current structure. Love the design, the sort of south side walkway that opens that building up for patrons and for residents and store owners, and helps stretch Valley Junction a little farther north. And yet it is a contemporary building because it's a new building, but it does have elements, historic elements to it, and it is the future. And we have to be progressive, and we have to be innovative, and we have to have visions and projects like this project, because we need to make sure we have the critical mass that keeps Valley Junction relevant and keeps it a destination, because Valley Junction is core to the spirit of the city. It is where generations have always gathered. It has the spirit and the energy that brought Scott back, has brought my kids back. And they don't just come back, they come back and they give back. And it is really important to this community. And tonight, you have an opportunity to decide on this project. More importantly, you have an opportunity to align yourself with Scott's vision, because that project and that vision, it does give a nod to the past, but it is so important for our future. It's so important to keep that a really vibrant area. And it is a very appealing multi-use building that will benefit current merchants and businesses, will be attractive to future residents. and most importantly, help keep the spirit of Valley Junction alive. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Jennifer Hampton, 541 16th Street. It's funny, he was saying Valley Junction, Valley Junction. No mention of historic Valley Junction. So at what point do we drop historic off the name of Valley Junction and just start, you know, with all kinds of new buildings? That's my thought on this. I appreciate the thought that goes into it. But I don't feel that that looks like a historic type of building that would be in the neighborhood. I mean, it looks like a Valley Junction building. It doesn't look like a historic Valley Junction building. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, so the action item for tonight is a resolution to approve the site plan. I know that this came through the Development Planning Council Committee on 2 separate occasions with a recommendation for approval. So what I'd like to do is get a motion in a second, then I'll ask for any final questions or comments.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. Any final questions or comments?
I think probably a lot of us have some comments to share. So I don't know who wants to go first.
Well, why don't we start, Matt? Do you mind? Because it came through your committee.
I don't mind.
You and Renee. We'll start with Matt and end with Renee. How's that? Yeah. Okay.
I have kind of withheld a lot of comment tonight because there are several comments I'd like to make on this particular project. I want to share some perspective because there's a lot of folks in this room I've spent a lot of time with over the last roughly year that care deeply about this project on both sides of the equation, both for it and against it. I want to share my perspective. So many of you know that I grew up in this area. I'm a 3rd generation resident, much like the gentleman that just spoke. And I care about history in general, but more specifically, community history is very important to me. The house I grew up in here in West Des Moines is a unique part of history. It's over 175 years old. I've collected historic pieces from the 1875 Andreas Atlas that features the Jordan House, which the West Des Moines Historical Society owns and maintains. Speaking of the West Des Moines Historical Society, I served on that board for several years. And I believe I saw Mr. Hatfield in the audience earlier. And I stay in touch with the Historical Society. I grew up going to Valley Junction as a young kid selling sweet corn along 5th with my grandfather. And Dave, to your comment, it is a bridge between generations down there. My uncle's built and run a dental office on 5th Street. I've been going there for as long as I can remember. Guess what I'm trying to say is Valley Junction is very near and dear to me, and preserving it is very important. There's countless reasons that this area has received an official historic designation. Of course, it's not a specific building. It's not the specific corner. It's not a design or a unique attribute to a certain area. It's throughout the landscape and throughout the area that brings its charm, its character, and its hometown feel. So for me, we need to preserve that intangible, hard to describe, hard to explain feeling. So my care and appreciation for our community's history doesn't end when it comes to proposed buildings like this. In fact, it's that care and that appreciation that led me down the path of due diligence, a path and diligence I felt compelled to complete, given the oath that I took when I was sworn into office. And that oath requires me to apply the law as written, not as desired, not as contemplated, not as somebody may want it to be in the future. So I spent a lot of time talking with residents, many of whom are here today, property owners, lawyers, including the city's legal staff reviewing their legal opinion, and others about this project. I visited the location on multiple times. I attended the planning and zoning meeting a couple weeks ago. I chaired the planning and development meeting where we considered input from all residents for nearly an hour and a half. I held several Zoom calls. I reviewed the Department of Interior standards on rehabilitation and historic preservation. Our residents, you here, those at home, need to know that our current controlling ordinance do not include a strict requirement for design standards. They do not include a strict requirement for color palettes, approved materials, parking minimums, or size restrictions that I've heard someone imposed. And while I've heard many great ideas, and Ralph, I agree that parking is going to be very important, those ideas are not codified yet in our ordinance, generally speaking. So I took an oath to apply our existing laws, nothing more and nothing less. In 2006, the Iowa Supreme Court opined in an opinion involving the city of Johnston that the council's only task is to determine whether the proposed site plan complies with the standards set forth in the ordinance. We cannot deny an application based upon outside factors outside the ordinance. Our ordinance does not contain requirements for color, the type of materials, parking, and other things. And while I believe we should have some of those protections, the reality is we don't. So that's why we have a moratorium on development in the area, and there is a working group that's focused on developing the future of Valley Junction and preserving the area. Finally, as it relates to the TIF program and the tax incentives involved, I believe we need to take a comprehensive look at those programs, especially as they relate to the upper story housing program and others that are being used in the area. I served on that due diligence committee. Thank you, Mayor, for the appointment to that. It was a great experience. And we reviewed many of these applications prior to my being elected to the council. And at that time, none of them involved the demolition of a building and building something new. I think it makes sense that we review those programs going forward, the match requirements that are involved, and the overall public dollars that are being used for specific projects as compared to potentially other viable things in the area. To me, Mr. Cutler's demonstrated an ability to build great projects. He's done St. Kilda's, he's done the Cat Cafe, and he's done Winchester's in that specific area. They preserve that intangible, hard to describe feeling. He's outreach to the community, and while controversial, based upon my due diligence and the ordinance that I've taken an oath to apply, I will be supporting this project tonight, and I continue to push the work group to ensure that we have soon standards we all know and we can all follow.
All right, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like Matt and Dave, Dean, I am at least a fourth, I haven't done my ancestry back, I'm at least a fourth generation, and probably even a fifth generation of Valley Junction. Like Matt, I shopped with my parents, grandmother, and whatnot in Valley Junction when it was at the shopping area of West Des Moines. A lot of those buildings remain virtually unchanged from the outside. They've gone through various ownerships, and each owner does everything they can to maintain the appearance of that building. That's what keeps it the historic, as Jennifer said, Valley Junction District. And it is on the Registry of Historic Places. As Matt said, it's not a particular building, it's the entire district. I have heard from numerous property owners, residents, and business owners that I represent in the First Ward that do not support this project, not because it doesn't necessarily meet code, it just doesn't fit. As Beth said, a picture that should have been put up is that building among two one-story buildings. If Mr. Cutler had come in with a two-story building, or even and I had suggested this, a two-story in the front and then a third of the way back, then go to three-story, so at least as you come up the street, it isn't this huge monstrosity. That didn't happen. So although code allows it, it doesn't have to take up the maximum that's allowed. It could have had on-site parking, but because code doesn't require it, he chose not to put it on. I like Mr. Haskins' suggestion, as I said earlier, of requiring the property or the residents there to park in the city-owned lot. I just don't know that that's legally possible to do, but I would like to see us explore that and see if we can make that happen. Much like the building across the street that's going up now and the previous one that Mr. Cutler built. Maybe legally he can do it, but in my heart, I cannot support something that the residents that have elected me to this position, the property owners and business owners that I represent in the Historic Valley Junction Business District are telling me that they don't like. I can't support it.
Russ?
Yeah, I am not a fifth-generation resident of West Des Moines. I'm a first-generation resident of West Des Moines, but I've been here since 1997. I've been in Iowa since 1990, came here to go to Drake University, and I am a proud, proud Iowan and West Des Moinesian. And I'm extremely proud of Valley Junction. I love Valley Junction. I think it's the heart of our community. And, you know, I'm really proud of the economic development programs that we put in place that were out of the box that really helped for Valley Junction to start developing. And, you know, I heard a lot from people around town about, you know, all the chain restaurants, and we don't have enough ma and pa restaurants. So what did we do? We came up with economic development programs to address that. We came up with the Property Improvement Fund and the Regulatory Compliance Fund to help small business owners to grow their business and to expand and to have successful businesses in Valley Junction. And exactly what we thought would happen, happened. And we saw a lot of growth and development in Valley Junction, and it is really hopping down there, more so than I've ever seen it since I've been here. And I'm really proud of that. Admittedly, you know, the success is why we're here, because now we are having some issues with parking that need to be addressed. None of us contemplated, as Councilman McKinney said, somebody tearing down a building and putting up a new one. The city ordinances that are in place right now, I've been a councilman for 11 and a half years. They've been in place since long before I think any of us were on the council, maybe even including you, Steve. So, and I think even Clyde, who's been here maybe as long or longer, said these ordinances were in place since before his time. It is a compliment.
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure.
Say you've been around a while.
But, you know, so I know there's been some people that are critical of some of the buildings that have gone up there, and people can say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And, you know, I have heard some criticism on some of the buildings that have been put up there. But they do meet the current code requirements. You know, the current code allows for 3 stories. Again, this has been in place since before any of us up here were on the council. The code doesn't specify the design standards. There just are not that specific as design standards there. The code doesn't require parking. So everything that Mr. Cutler has done, it meets the code requirements. We have no legal ability to say no to this project, even if we wanted to. If we said no to the project, voted against the project, we end up in a court of law, we lose, the building goes up anyway. But again, I've never been so excited about Valley Junction in my life. I think that it's a lot of hustle and bustle going on down there, a lot of exciting small businesses going in there. But the residents that have brought this to our attention, I think starting after the rusted building went in, that's the one we get a lot of the complaints about, they have some valid concerns. You all do have some valid concerns, and those concerns need to be addressed. And I'm really excited about addressing those concerns all together through this committee process. We want to make the best Valley Junction that we can possibly make. And I think we need to talk about 3-story versus 2-story. We need to talk about tear down versus rehab and what we want to see and what we're going to allow going forward. I think we need to talk about design standards and what materials we're going to allow to be used on these buildings. And then at that point in time, if developers like Mr. Cutler, Mr. Wiederstein, and others want to come in with this new set of standards and they want to develop, great. We want them to develop. But we need to maintain our historic Valley Junction. And I've said it before, it would be my goal that I bring in my family from Milwaukee and have them drive down Fifth Street and play a game. You tell me which building is new and which one's old, and they can't do that. Now, that might be a little difficult, but I want those buildings to blend in. I want them to look historic. It's so cool when somebody, rehabs a historic building and it looks really old on the outside and it's got, modern conveniences on the inside. That's awesome. That's what I'd like to see happen there. But I am more excited than ever about Valley Junction and about the future of Valley Junction and what's going to go on down there. It is an amazing place. It is a gem. You're right, we need to make some changes. We need to address some things. But this is going to be an award-winning place when we are done. And I'm really excited about the future of Valley Junction. And I will be supporting that project tonight, Cutler's project.
So my first time coming to Iowa, my car broke down along the Mixmaster. It was not the best first trip to Iowa. But the next time I was in Iowa was after I met my future wife, who went to Valley High School, grew up in West Des Moines. And so I'm not going to count that first time, but the second time I came up, it was October of 2005, and we went to Valley Junction. We did not go to Jordan Creek Mall, which apparently had just opened in 2004 or something like that. I don't know. And I am not going to remember the stores that we went into at all. I know we went into several. It was cute. It was adorable. It was bustling on that Friday night, I guess it would have been. I do not remember the stores because I was planning on moving back to St. Louis, where I'm from, which is just a stupid thing to say, because this was the right place to be. And so really my first real time to Iowa was actually visiting Valley Junction. And I have to say, I've been looking over that 2016 study that was done 5 years ago. I just joined council at the beginning of 2020, so I was not in on that not on the first study, because there have been many, as I found out, but I wasn't in on that 2016 study. And I'm really excited to see that study reinvigorated, because I think that's what we all want for Valley Junction. We want Valley Junction to have vigor, to be reinvigorated, assuming that it didn't have vigor in the first time. 16 years ago, it was great. I was just there for one night in 2005, but it was a great night. And this 2016 study, as I'm looking through it, and I'm looking at all the work that went into it, it was really impressive. And when I'm listening to Sue talk earlier about vision for what Valley Junction's going to be, what it should be, if we can get everybody together, I'm really enthusiastic about this idea about getting us back together and readdressing the 2016 master plan. And you know what? I'm not sure what developments might come from this. Maybe it will be, instead of a 36-foot limitation, maybe it'll be 32-foot, maybe it'll be 30-foot, maybe we lower the requirements so we don't have 3-story. I have no idea what the conversation will lead to. But I do know that as I'm looking through the plan, we need to be keeping that historic nature as much as we can. And so I am supportive of this project, but I strongly support this moratorium, because it allows us to, as Sue was basically saying, to figure it out, to spend the coming weeks, the coming months, the next year figuring it out, so we can figure out exactly how to maintain the old, how to reinvigorate the parts that need reinvigoration, assuming that's a word. But the work has to be done. And so just like I'm supportive of this project, I strongly support the moratorium so that we can get the work done. And I even more strongly support the future that I know all of us together can, the future that we all can build together, so to speak. So thank you for everyone else's comments. Councilwoman Hardman?
Okay.
I'm done.
Well, I didn't know that tonight was going to be the night where we all talk about how long we lived in West Des Moines. didn't bring my living history resume with me tonight, other than I will say I've been in Iowa since 1979. I came here sight unseen to attend Drake University, and I fell in love with Iowa, and I never left, much to my mom's chagrin. I also have been in West Des Moines going on close to 20 years. I've been on city council for 4 years. And I want to say, of anything that I have done over 4 years, I have probably not spent more time on this particular issue and the combination of issues over 4 years. I say that in a loving way. I say that in a devoted way, because when you elect officials, they are to be there to listen, to learn, and to lead. And as a member of the Planning and Development Committee, I think that's where we have heard the most about these projects. But where I've heard the most about both sides of the project is getting in my car and going to the historic Valley Junction area and doing some listening. I remember I got up on a Sunday and I drove down the area and people were outside in their yards and I'm parking my car. They probably thought I was crazy, but just asking them their thoughts and their feelings. And I heard things on both sides, friends. Both sides, pro and against. This is what makes this role so incredibly difficult, because no matter how we push that button, someone is not going to be happy. 50% may be happy, 50% unhappy. But I did hear words in everyone's conversation. I heard future, spirit, historical, vibrancy, growth, thoughtful development, communication. Words and words from each and every one of you. And I want to say personally, as an elected official, I am thrilled that each of you are here, expressing your thoughts and your heart and your desire of what you want this city to be. What a boring world it would be as an elected official to sit there and just cast votes and not one doggone person stands up at a public meeting. How boring it will be. But you've come meeting after meeting, many of you, to express your thoughts and your feelings. But what you really have given us is what your heart is saying. You've given us your heart through your thoughts. I've been on tours when I canceled family dinners so I can go out on a tour on a Friday night, coming home to angry folks that says, why weren't you here for dinner? But I needed to tour Valley Junction, and I learned a lot. Going to neighborhood meetings, making calls, receiving calls. But at the end of the day, in regards to this project, it's important that we hear and we listen and we learn and we lead. And I have heard that you were concerned about aspects of Scott's project, Mr. Cutler's project. But I have also, in all fairness to Mr. Cutler, have seen from my own eyes and from conversations, change after change after change after change after change, trying to modify the original renderings to accommodate some things that make it more aesthetically pleasing. I'm going to tell you today that I've worked with and seen developers that would not make a change. I don't care what anyone says. But in all fairness, we do need to say to Mr. Cutler, he was willing and able to bring forth changes to this project that, while might not be pleasing in all aspects of every one of you, there was a willingness to bend, a willingness to yield, a willingness to say, I'll change this for that. Not many developers do that. And I don't want anyone in this room, regardless of how I'm voting of this project, and you'll hear in a minute how I will vote, to think that your voice didn't matter or your opinion didn't matter, or that the need to continue to use historical in way in which we further infill and develop this particular area. Your voices have been heard loud and clear. And that Rust Building woke your spirit. It awakened your spirit and said enough is enough. We want input into how things look. But we have to realize that when we send a developer out there and they give us a project, we ask that they stay within the ordinances, stay within the code. And folks, Mr. Cutler has done that. Mr. Cutler has done that. So I just want to say to each and every one of you, as I've embarked upon this journey that I began day one when I took this historic seat, that I've listened, I've learned so much, and I've got to lead, and I've got to push a button tonight. And I want to say to you that I am increasingly more diligent about this committee getting together to further define future initiatives and future projects. We're going to hold everybody to that. And I want to just conclude by saying we will get through parking issues. We are the city of West Des Moines, and we can collectively work on solutions to deal with parking issues. But I'll end by saying that one of the best things that's come out of this in this particular issue is one that I'm going to reference, Mr. Nate Hahn, who comes up to this dais and said, I just want open communication and transparency and a voice. Mr. Hahn, that meant a lot to me. And it means a lot that you and others care enough to say, all we want from this city is that you're not going to agree with us on everything, but we want communication, transparency, and a voice. And that's all we can give you. And that's what we owe you as an elected official. I am going to vote yes on the Cutler project, Mr. Cutler project, for reasons that were already listed here tonight, and for reasons that I want to support someone that is engaged in this community to make a number of changes to try to meet somewhere in the middle. We're going to all be okay, folks. We're all going to live through this. Our children are going to love it. Children are going to still be around. Valley Junction's not going to go into Never Never Land. We're going to survive this. But sometimes we must meet in the middle. Thank you.
I guess a couple comments for me, even though I don't vote. I think it's important to share my thoughts on issues that some people might view as controversial. I've been supportive of Scott's project. Since I learned about it, you know, my mom's side of the family came here in 1908, and my grandparents went to Valley. My grandfather went to work for the Rock Island Railroad when he was 16 years old and worked for 49 years. They lived in Valley Junction their entire life. My mom grew up in Valley Junction. My dad moved here when he was 11 or 12 years old because his dad got the head coach, football coaching job at Drake University. So I'm a fourth generation West Des Moiner, and I can remember when I got on the council in 1996, the issue was the flood in 1993. It was difficult to get anybody to make investments in Valley Junction because it flooded too frequently. So how could you put all this money in your business, in your home, when you couldn't protect it from floodwaters? And I haven't seen the memo we've got, but from my memory, the city spent over $60 million on flood protection after the floods in '93 to try to assure the residents and the businesses in Valley Junction that it's now safe to make investments in your property down there so that we can grow that area of our city and take greater pride into it. And we have had record developments down there. I just look at Scott's development agreement. I mean, he's committed to spend $2.6 million. He's going to get $151,000 back. I mean, people talk about these incentives. I mean, to spend $2.6 million on a new project and the incentive is $151,000, Scott obviously feels like there's success in the development. And I can share with you, developers build what they believe is going to be successful. Who's going to spend $2.6 million of your own money if you don't think you have a project that's going to be successful? So I'm very supportive of it. I appreciate everything he's done. I appreciate him hanging in there. I'm anxious to see where this next round of discussions go. I can tell you that no one was more passionate about Valley Junction than Mayor Dino Rodish. And he was mayor when I first got on the council. Every 3 or 4 or 5 years, we seem to take on issues in Valley Junction. We think we get a consensus, and 2 or 3 years later, pop up, people don't like it. And so part of my frustration after 22 years is we have tried to work on that area of our city multiple times under these same issues, and it seems like we feel like we've got the right direction, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, a group of people come forward and say, we don't like it anymore. We want to look at it again. So I'm anxious for this next process to go through. I hope it's completed by the end of the year because I'd like to have some say in it. But at the end of the day, you know, we need to come up with some parameters that people can live with that don't change every 3 or 4 years. And we have to come up with a process that's a lot more economically friendly than this one, because I'm fearful that a lot of developers they're going to give up on projects down here. If this is the thing they have to go through, the amount of money they spend, the amount of time that they're in meetings, when they think they're in compliance and all of a sudden they're brought back through all these meetings and some of the comments that I've heard, I hope we can get it and we can get it right this next time, because the last thing we want to do is lose our momentum. I mean, if we lose our momentum down there, it's really difficult to get it back because that momentum goes somewhere else. And so I think, Scott, this is a great project. I'm happy to hear that 4 of the 5 council people are going to be supportive of it. I encourage the group and our staff to move this next process as quickly as we can so that we make sure that we don't lose the momentum down there, and that potential developers and redevelopment down there, they know what the rules are, so they can decide if they want to come there, and if so, how they want to invest their money in a project that they believe is going to be successful. Because it's their money. If they can't make it successful, they're the ones who lose it. And so with that, I think we've got, Ryan, we have both a motion and a second on approving it. Okay. All right, please vote.
Four yes, 1 no.
All right, Scott, your site plan's approved. 7F is Chase Bank, 7160 University Avenue, approval of a site plan to allow construction of a commercial bank, Forright LC and West Lakes Commercial LLC. This is a resolution to approve the site plan, and there are no outstanding issues. And this came through Development and Planning Council Committee with a recommendation as well.
Move approval.
Second.
Questions or comments? All right, please vote.
Five yes.
7G, West Des Moines EMT, paramedics and EMT, basic local 3586 in the city of West Des Moines. Contract July 1, 2021 through June 30 of 2025. City of West Des Moines and local 3586. It's a resolution to approve the contract, and the agreement has been ratified by the union already.
Move approval.
Second.
Questions or comments? All right, please vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Five yes.
Item 7H, amendment to City Code Title 6, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Chapter 9, Traffic Schedules, Section 1, Official Traffic Controls, intersection of Mill Civic Parkway and 41st Street, intersection of 88th Street and Ashworth Road, intersection of South 88th Street and Raccoon River Drive, and intersection of Grand Avenue and Raccoon River Drive. City initiated, this is an ordinance for the first reading, and it came through the Public Services City Council Committee with a unanimous recommendation.
Move consideration of the first reading.
Second.
Questions or comments?
This is really exciting because one of the things on here, a resident reached out just a few months ago, and so thanks to the engineering, to everyone in traffic, because this is going to get that hawk beacon in between Chapel Ridge and the library. We already have the hawk beacon between Chapel Ridge and 39th Street over E.P. True, so that's exciting. This is exciting, so our residents are going to be safer, our children are going to be safer, and this is great, along with all the other stoplights, which are a delight also.
Okay, please vote on 7H.
Lots of things are a delight.
Yes.
Putting a lot of
5
simplicity in
yes.
the ward.
Yeah.
5 yes, an ordinance amending the city code of the city of West Des Moines, Iowa, 2019 by amending provisions pertaining to the traffic code relating to official traffic controls.
Move approval of the first reading.
Second.
All right, please vote.
Delight. Pun. Didn't even know it.
5 yes.
I don't think anybody else picked up on it either.
No, it's fine. It's bad.
All right, item 8, there are no items to receive, file, and/or refer. Item 9, other matters. Are there any other matters that any council member wants to raise tonight?
You know, Mayor, I just have I guess, an item that we approved earlier for I2, which relates to architectural services for the Recplex. And I can appreciate there's some history there that maybe before I was involved, that we had an architect and then we kind of switched boards. I don't want to get into the details of that, but as I read what we went through today, I know that we as a city are incurring a lot of additional expenses because of some activities maybe that weren't done appropriately at the first go-around. So if this were somebody coming to me in my capacity and they said, hey, you know, what do you think of this? I'd say, you know, you ought to explore whether or not the city should be trying to recover some of the expenses we're incurring from the folks that put us in this position in the first place. And I don't know if we've explored that, but I just wanted to raise that as it's a significant chunk of money that we are now having to spend because the other folks didn't quite do the job. And so it's something that has been weighing on me as I've been reading this, and I wanted to raise it. I don't know that there's any action item, but I just want to raise it for the council.
Okay. And I guess, Dick, I don't know if you guys looked into that when we terminated the first architectural contract.
Yeah, we did. There was some consideration we gave when we terminated. We did consult with an outside attorney as well and went through some of the issues with Mr. Larison. And I know some of these things have subsequently arisen, but to Councilmember McKinney, there was some question as to the recovery and didn't feel it was
Well, maybe to help understand it better, I don't know if there's an easy way to take the additional expenses and allocate what was never in the original project to begin with versus what the additional costs are because of the issue with the former architect. Because to Matt's point, there is a big number there, but I think we've added a lot of stuff to this project that wasn't in the original design to begin with as we've developed it. So it might help all of us if that number was 20% was architect issues versus what may be viewed as a bigger number.
Yeah, I guess I'm not, I don't want to create a bunch of work. If an analysis has been done and a release maybe has already existed, that's fine. But, you know, as I look at this, it's the new maximum not to exceed is 1.2 million. That's not something we would have incurred but for this other architect not doing his or her job. So for me, that's 1.2 million we're having to spend that we wouldn't have spent if somebody had, you know, performed as they, you know.
There's various issues, but a big part of it was the architect prior to that. That's why he's the former architect, to be honest. But no, we can probably give you a little bit more of a breakdown.
Okay. All right, any other matters?
I just want to thank staff as I'm out there door knocking. I'm hearing from residents that have some issues and concerns, and oftentimes I'm sending emails on the front step of somebody's house, and oftentimes Brian Hemeseth might get some of these, Joe Corey, Jim Dickinson, Eric Peterson. So it's door-to-door season. Thank you guys for getting back to me, getting back to the residents and dealing with some of these issues. Really appreciate it.
Can't wait for you to knock on my door.
You've got a lot of issues, huh?
Slam.
We will officially adjourn the council meeting to go into executive session. Yeah, the executive session's upstairs in the boardroom, so everybody grab a break on your way up to the boardroom.
Thank you all.
Try to inject a little